Welcome in, Notre Dame fans. This is the voice of college football on Notre Dame. I'm your host, Patrick Previty. We're without Brendan today because there was some major news as far as the Notre Dame football program was concerned. One that a lot of people potentially saw coming, and that was Steve Angeli has officially entered the transfer portal. So today we're going to be talking about what that means for the program and the quarterback battle coming up, as well as where will Steve Angeli potentially end up. So first things first, obviously this Notre Dame football team and program said that this was going to be an honest quarterback battle. CJ Carr wasn't going to get it because of any sort of appeal to potential. Kenny Minchie wasn't going to get it. He was going to get a fair shot, rather. That was kind of what everybody was saying prior. But he wasn't going to get it just because he's a running quarterback or because they felt like CJ Carr was maybe still, not up to 100% or Steve Angeli didn't have the potential. No, 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 no. It was going to be an even battle through and through. And Steve Angeli, despite having more experience than the other two guys, didn't have a ton of experience. So it was going to be even throughout. But definitely as things started, it felt like Steve Angeli potentially did have a bit of an edge because he had been the Orange Bowl hero when he came in the game against Penn State after Riley Leonard definitely suffered a concussion. But as things went on, and you're hearing reports that Kenny Minchie totally looks different, looks really like somebody who could be a dual threat quarterback at the FBS level at one of the top programs in the country. Now we're thinking, okay, then here we go. Buckle up because this is going to be a race throughout the spring and could trickle into the fall. And then CJ Carr, what we saw from the spring game clearly shows that he was slinging it during the spring practices. And it became clear that Steve Angeli, unfortunately for him, wasn't going to be able to live out that dream of being the Notre Dame starting quarterback without those two guys at least being right behind him saying, hey, coach, if the offense can't get it going in the first half, you know where to look for, or if he throws two picks or something like that early on in the game, hey, you know where to go. So he ends up having to leave. I think it's clear that while I mentioned that there was a fair quarterback race, there was also just fair communication between the coaches and the quarterbacks. And I think Steve Angeli, they understood probably if he wasn't the leader in the clubhouse this spring, it was too risky for him to take this into the fall and, run it, try his luck at beating CJ Carr and Kenny Minchie, who Steve Angeli would obviously never say this, but those two guys have a different level of arm talent and maybe potentially the cerebral side that Steve Angeli was trying to aim as his, biggest case probably wasn't going to be able to make up for it, nor his experience or any of the locker room leadership that he could provide. So they told him probably honestly that, hey, look, you're not number one. And as we mentioned on the live earlier, Brendan said this 2 and 3 is just about the same thing to me. And it's time to hop in the portal because that just means that you're not the leader. And unfortunately, it was just too big of a risk. Now, where could he potentially end up? There's plenty of places that are going to be looking for a quarterback. There's plenty of places, even in the Power Four, that could potentially use Angeli's services that I think he would be great in. I know I'm seeing a lot of different stuff about Minnesota and Purdue. We'll see if that is something that tickles the fancy of Steve Angeli. I don't know if I see him particularly at any of those schools, but one place that I do know is looking for a quarterback is Tennessee. And they could potentially want a guy who can come in for a year and be the man, and then they can give the keys over to, I believe they have a 5-star backup quarterback who's now the starting quarterback at least. So that could be another option. And then moving away from the Power Four, I think Tulane could be another option in the group of five. This is a team that has been really good over the last handful of years, winning even a Cotton Bowl, if my memory serves me correctly, against USC a handful of seasons ago. So that's a program that has plenty of respect. That is a really good group of five team that could potentially have an inside track to the playoffs. Steve Angeli might be able to start for them as well. They have also been in a ton of different quarterback crystal balls, quarterback bidding wars, if you will. So they're definitely in the market for that. So right now I'm seeing Tennessee, Purdue, Minnesota, and Tulane. But over the next coming days, that will be clear. So how does this shape up for CJ Carr and Kenny Minchie? Well, one quarterback down means you only got one more quarterback to beat if you're either of those guys. And they both present different skill sets, if you will. CJ Carr, we saw a little bit of what made him so great and a little bit of what maybe can temper your expectations. He threw a pick in the spring game. He forced the throw, had the confidence to make the throw, but it was some over the middle with the pocket collapsing. Probably could have just taken a sack there and really tried to thread the needle. But on the other hand, he had some amazing throws. He started off the spring game, 9 for 11, 100, over 100 yards and a touchdown. And the offense was humming. The offense was humming over, with anybody there under center. But with CJ Carr, you could just tell that arm talent was seriously there. It was something that maybe Notre Dame hasn't seen in a handful of years, even with Sam Hartman and Riley Leonard. CJ Carr had a different level of arm talent. Cannot stress that enough. How many times have I said arm talent? It's been there plenty, and it was on show during that spring game. Now, Kenny Minchie, what is his inside track? Well, I think when you're dealing with him if you're dealing with CJ Carr and Kenny Minchie, nobody has experience in this room. So I think where he potentially would fall to Steve Angeli is they might be like, okay, Kenny Minchie we might not be too confident to throw him out there just yet. Maybe we would opt for Steve Angeli, but I mean, clearly Notre Dame didn't want to do that. But with that gone, now I think you're comparing play styles. How do you want this offense to run and who has the most potential? And Kenny Minchie is a very interesting prospect because while CJ Carr looked like he had a lot of that NFL type of arm talent, Kenny Minchie wasn't too far behind. And you have the legs. Kenny Minchie is not the same runner that Riley Leonard is. Riley Leonard was essentially just like a smaller Cam Newton, or at least that's how he was used last year for Notre Dame. Kenny Minchie is a speed finesse runner. He's a smaller guy, so he's going to try to evade those tackles. And he was certainly doing that in the spring game. He did rush for a touchdown in the spring game. He's got something that we haven't really seen in the last handful of years from any Notre Dame quarterbacks. I kind of gave it more of a comparison to like what I thought Ian Book could potentially do, when he was kind of getting out of the pocket on the run. Kenny Minchie's throws on the run probably could be polished a little bit, but we saw some flashes in the spring game as well. So we know that his arm is there and it's comparable. Do they go with potentially his legs? I think it's a very interesting conversation. But now that Steve Angeli's out, it feels like a little bit of a different race, and it feels official that it's going to be either CJ Carr or Kenny Minchie. And I think a lot of people are leaning towards CJ Carr after the spring game, but I say maybe we all hold our horses because this is going to go deep into the fall, and it's going to be a very interesting one. But let me know what you guys think in the comments section down below. Where is Steve Angeli headed, and who do you think is the front runner in the Notre Dame quarterback room?